What's up, guys? This is TheKephas. Today I'm going to show you some macros that I've created with Gnome Sequencer Enhanced, an extremely powerful add-on that allows you to create robust macros that can perform most, if not all, of your rotation with a single button. This can be extremely useful if you have a disability like myself, or if you just want to be lazy. Bear in mind that these macros can be extremely helpful, but they also have their limits, so they're made primarily for those who are playing the game at a more casual level. But feel free to use them as you see fit. If you'd like to learn more about Gnome Sequencer and how to use it, I recommend that you head over to WoW Lazy Macros. You can find links to all of that, and to import strings for these macros in the description. Today we're going to be checking out the macro that I've created for tank shamans in Season of Discovery. Now, I say tank shamans, but what I mean is a shaman that uses a shield, and that's what we're focusing on today, and I'm really excited because this one has been a lot of fun. I'm pretty early in the leveling process, and I have everything, pretty much everything that I need, every rune that I need to make this work, and so I'm able to get this one out pretty quickly, and that excites me because this is a lot of fun. I've had a lot of fun playing a sword and board shaman. It's been really cool. The runes are great, and it's just an easy way to play the character, and the rotation's pretty easy macro. So yeah, this one's going to be a lot of fun, but there's a lot to go over. So first things first, let's go ahead and take a look at what runes I am currently using. There are 3 key runes, and I actually got these really early on, so it's kind of cool. 2 of them in the starting zone, and then 1 of them like right as soon as I came into the Barrens. So it's pretty cool. Obviously, if you're going to be a shield shaman, then you will want to take shield mastery. It's basic. It's all based around blocking, so the more you block, the better it's going to be, increasing your armor and also increasing, restoring mana every time you block, which is pretty cool. So you want to go with that one. And then we get into your other tanky rune, which is Way of Earth. This enhances Rockbiter Weapon. Whenever you have Rockbiter Weapon applied, you have more health, take reduced damage, reduce crit, and it basically turns Earth Shock into a melee taunt with its own cooldown. So that's really cool. So you have that one to go with as well. And then we get down here into the bottom, and the one I'm going with is Molten Blast. This is a really great rune, gives you an extra attacking ability, AoE, as long as like everything's like in front of you, which is cool. And the coolest thing is if you have Flame Shock applied to targets, then Flame Shock's damage has a chance to reset the cooldown of Molten Blast, which can be really awesome. So if you can manage to keep up with the mana, you can sometimes use Molten Blast a lot, which is pretty cool. So those are all the runes that I'm currently using. Now let's go ahead and take a look at my build. Now I always like to preface this by saying, you know, that I am no authority on classic WoW talent builds by any means, especially in Season of Discovery where so much is being changed up. I just go with what I feel like is kind of cool and what's fun, and I think it's cool because with the Shield Shaman, there are actually a couple of different builds that you could go with, I feel. One more focused on DPS, so if you're doing what I'm doing, which is a lot of out in the world questing solo content, then a more DPS oriented build can be nice. But then of course there's your tanky build, and it's very clear what talents you can go with there. Now neither build that you choose is going to change up how the macro works or how your rotation works, so you can do whatever you want pretty much and you'll be good to go. But with that being said, we'll go over my, well, I don't have much of a build right now because I'm only like level 13, so I only have a couple of talents that I'm using, but I'll show you guys, you know, what I'm going with. Okay, so I'm going in the elemental tree. So I'm technically an elemental melee sword and board character. My goal here is to buff my shocks, and so reducing the mana cost, increasing the damage, you know, of my shocks, also increasing like lightning blast, which I'm not ever really using, or lightning bolt and chain lightning. I'm not using those, but the shocks are what I'm in for here. So I'm putting points into these. I'm going to skip this row entirely. I'm going to put a point into this one here, elemental focus, which is nice, and then of course I'm going to put points in here to reduce the cooldown of my shocks, which is also going to be cool. Give me an extra, you know, more time to use my shocks, which is great. So that's where I'm going to build out my character for now. But if I were to tank, it's pretty obvious. You would go down the enhancement tree. You would definitely be going for the shield, improved shield specialization, and then of course increasing your crit, and then of course going here and increasing your chance to dodge. That's obviously what you do. You're playing a tank. So there's a couple other options, I suppose. I don't know how good they'd be. Like you could buff, lightning shield if you want to. If you want, you're doing out in the world stuff, you want to use Ghost Wolf faster, I guess you could do that if you wanted to. But I just feel like there are certainly other points that would be much more valid, much more viable than those. But do whatever you want. And then of course, you could buff your totems if you want to. It's up to you. But yeah, so it's pretty obvious. Like you can use either build. You can go for a build that buffs your shocks and therefore increases your damage, or you can go for a more tanky build and the macro will work all the same. So that's what's cool about it, is this macro kind of covers 2 different play styles. So yeah, it's pretty neat. So with that being said, let's go ahead and take a look at what the macro actually does. We're going to type /GSE to open up Gnome Sequencer, and this macro is called Kef Enhance Short, Tank. Okay, so it's a Shaman tank macro. So it's a all-in-one macro for tank shamans, basically. It's going to pretty much cover everything. Let's go ahead and take a look at it. Okay, so this is a standard sequence macro. It doesn't do a lot, but it covers your entire rotation all in one button, and it's very rare for me to be able to do that in Classic WoW, so I'm pretty excited about this one. So first things first, we have our shock cast sequence, and what this is going to do is it's going to pair your flame shock with frost shock, because both of those share a cooldown and they both go off about every 6 seconds, and that's just enough time for you to reapply your flame shock. So you use flame shock and then you use frost shock, and then you're waiting for your cooldown to come back off flame shock. You use flame shock again, and by that point it'll be just in time for you to reapply that flame shock, and then you use frost shock again on the next cooldown. So that's kind of the idea. As you can tell, I don't have frost shock yet. You need to be level 20 to have frost shock, and if you're not using the Way of Earth rune, then you could substitute in earth shock instead of frost shock, and it would work the same way. So you can do that if you want to, and that's another option. It just depends on what rune you're using, but that's kind of the idea. So then we have Molten Blast. Macro is going to be using this one on cooldown whenever it's available. When it resets, the macro will use it again. Just make sure that you're always in melee range. That's going to benefit you quite a lot, because this ability can go off if you're in combat and you're not in range. Then it's just not going to be very useful. And then of course we do have Earth Shock in here by itself, because with Way of Earth, Earth Shock has its own cooldown. Now this one was debatable. Okay, so like if you're playing as a tank, you probably don't want to be using Earth Shock on cooldown. You want to be using it as more of a taunt. So you can totally remove it from the macro. Just click on the X here, remove it, click save, and it's gone. But since I'm going with a more DPS oriented build, then having that extra shock and using that cooldown is helpful, because my shocks are benefiting from my talent build, which is improving how much damage they deal and how often I can use them. So that's why I have it in there. It's just an extra thing to use. It's debatable whether or not I should. And of course, if say you're not using Way of Earth, then you could remove this still and then replace Frost Shock with Earth Shock, or if you're like in the earlier leveling process, you could do that if you want to. It's entirely up to you how you want to do it, but basically that's what I'm doing. So it works pretty well. Usually, like in my case right now, since I don't have Frost Shock, the macro just uses Flame Shock and then it stops. It'll just get stuck on Frost Shock, but usually by the time Flame Shock is gone, the target's pretty much dead, so I don't have to worry about it either way. It's not really a big deal. And then of course, you have your standard targeting fare, and that's pretty much it. It's a straightforward macro. It's going to be using your shocks, doing a pretty good job of not overstacking or over applying flame shock. I feel the shared cooldowns actually is a bit of a benefit in this case. It definitely helps out a lot. It's just a matter of making sure that you're using the right shock depending on what runes you're using, and then of course using Molten Blast, and as whenever it's off cooldown. And then of course, if you do have Way of Earth, as an option, if you're going with more of a DPS oriented build, then you can use Earth Shock as an extra ability, and it'll do a little bit more damage. And yeah, it's pretty cool. So that's pretty much how this macro works. It's really nice. You're going to be doing obviously you want to be keeping track of your weapon swing timer, making sure that you're not interrupting your weapon swings. It's pretty easy to do though. Just kind of time it, whenever the weapon swing goes off, then you can kind of spam the macro a bit and then, stop and let your weapon swing again. Obviously, things like, you know, lightning bolt, if you're ever using those ranged abilities, you're going to manage that on a separate button. All of your totems, obviously, you'll have to manage those on separate buttons. You know, buffs like, you know, if you're using lightning shield or earth shield for whatever reason, or, you know, sometimes even mana shield or water shield can be useful in certain situations. You can do that if you want to as well. It's up to you. That one's a big sacrifice though, but it's a nice rune either way. So, you know, it's up to you what you want to do, but just make sure that you understand that you have to use those, you know, those buff abilities in your totems, all the utility stuff, with the exception of Earth Shock, you know, all on separate buttons. So with all that being said, I hope that explains things pretty well. If you're going to try this one out, let me know what you think about it in the comments below. Let me know what build you're going with. And with all that being said, I will see you guys on the next one. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, let me know by clicking that like button. And feel free to share it with your friends so they can enjoy it as well. And if you'd like to see more videos, you can subscribe to the channel and click on the bell icon to be notified as soon as new videos are posted. You can also follow me on Facebook, and if you'd like, you can support my work on Patreon. Links to all that stuff can be found in the description below. This is TheKephas. Until next time.